Thanks to Sia's spear, the beast had slowed down just enough for Quinn to move out of the way, avoiding the vine whip. A second spear was thrown and had landed in the same spot on the beast's legs. The effect of 2 spears had stacked, and now the beast was 20% slower than it usually would have been, and also 20% weaker. The students took advantage of this temporary weakness. Their attacks, which were bouncing off the beast, are now damaging it, and the vines that were troubling slowed down. With Vorden and Sia using their spirit spears, the beast had now lost 40% of its overall strength. It was nearly half of what it used to be. Quinn no longer felt the need for him or Fex to get involved when fighting the beast. The beast now looked heavily injured. It lifted its front 2 feet into the air and slammed them onto the ground. The beast repeatedly did this action as it roared and screamed. At the same time, the vines that were coming off from the bud on its back swung more widely. The beast used its long head and looked back into the forest. The next moment, it started running back from where it came from. "Nobody should chase the beast," Dell shouted. "Some advanced-type beasts and above have something called a berserker mode. Once injured to a certain point, if the beast feels like it's stuck in a corner, it will activate its berserker mode, sometimes increasing its strength several times." But then, a female with light pink hair stepped in front of Quinn and bowed down to him. As she lifted her head, her eyes were filled with tears. "Thank you so much for saving my friend," the pink-haired girl said. After that, she hurried off to join her teammates. The thanks should have made Quinn feel good, but it didn't. Originally, he had only gone out there not to save the students, but because he saw it as an opportunity to take their blood. He didn't deserve the praise. When the students had all settled down, they decided to have a minute of silence, out of respect for the students that had been lost. But they couldn't spend much time because they were in a serious situation right now. Leo had arrived at the camp where the distress signal had come from. There were no students around. Leo started to hunt around for clues when the sounds of large, heavy footsteps could be heard heading in his direction. A large flame of red energy seemed to be spiraling in his direction. This was what happened when a beast was just about to go into berserker mode. "If it gets to that point, it might be a little bit inconvenient," Leo moaned as he drew out his trusty sword. Immediately 6 lines of red energy came whipping out at Leo. Focusing his mind, he waited until all paths of the red energy crossed each other. In that moment, he took a single swing of his blade. The 6 vines that had come out at him had all been sliced off. The line of energy was thin and white, but the beast had no time to react, and it had completely passed through its neck. "I guess you can't regenerate your head," said Leo. After defeating the beast, he didn't stop for a moment, not even to extract the crystal core from its body. Right now, the students were a priority, and if they had run into similar beasts to the one he had just faced, he feared the worst for the students. They started to travel up the left side of the mountain. Dell had made the decision and was ordering the group around, but he wasn't the one that stood in front of the group. Instead, some of the stronger groups had their frontliner. The scanners had been turned on. They would still record points and work as long as they were within a 200-meter radius of Dell. The group decided to stay closer, and no one was venturing far away from their team or far from the whole group. The students started to walk around to see if there were any other options to scale the mountain, or if they could see the shelter from the edges of the mountain. Dell was currently just standing in the middle, looking up at the mountain to his right and down the sloped path from where they had come from. In the middle of their exploration, though, 3 clear and distinctive dings were suddenly heard. The students all turned to where the sound came from, as it indicated that a beast had been discovered by the scanner. But looking at the student whose scanner went off, it looked like there was nothing, even around him. "What did you discover?" Dell said as he walked over to the student. The student pointed at a purple blade of grass on the floor. But to his surprise, the scanner said he wasn't holding a plant, but a beast. When Dell snatched the scanner from the student, a dark expression appeared on his face. "An intermediate beast, this little thing? How can that be possible?" The students were not actively looking at the grass around them, but now they noticed that there were a few single strands of purple grass every so often from the grasses surrounding them. "Is it going to rain?" Layla asked, but Quinn was interested in the beast. He bent down and looked closer at the blade of grass. "Inspect. Intermediate beast. Dumping bait beast. The top of the beast's head can often seem like a blade of grass. while most of its body remained underground. The beast cannot move, but when the rain comes it will sprout from underneath. As a single raindrop fell on the purple shade of grass, it suddenly shook, and the ground started to vibrate as well. "Guys, get away from the purple grass!" Quinn shouted to his teammates. "Let's head back down the slope." As Quinn said these words, a 2-meter-tall purple plant appeared behind him. Its body was as thick as a tree, and its head was as wide as a car. On top of its head was the strand of grass that could barely be seen on top of the giant plant-like beast. "Quinn!" Layla shouted as a plant dived down. But it was too late. The large plant had swallowed Quinn. Chaos erupted on the side slope of the mountain. However, the beasts were too fast. As if it was a snake, the plants opened their mouths wide and sometimes consumed more than one student at a time, and one of these students was Quinn. "No, he's not dead," Peter replied. "I can tell." "I'll go get him," Fex said. There was no panic on Fex's face, just a slight smile. "Eat me then, you piece of—" Then he was gone, swallowed by the beast plant. The others stayed there watching the plant for a few seconds, hoping that Fex had some sort of plan. But after watching for a while and seeing no result, the situation couldn't be more obvious. "Run!" Borden shouted. "That's all we can do. If Peter says Quinn is safe, then we just have to believe him." The whole group had now been swallowed by different beet plants. Fex and Quinn, Layla and Borden, and finally Peter and Sia. A few of the other students had been swallowed. A few were also knocked off the side of the cliff. The moment the rain stopped, all the beasts went into hibernation. They returned underground and turned into beautiful stalks of purple grasses once more. Amazingly, soil started to form over the purple grasses, and in the blink of an eye, the mountain returned to its original state. It was as if nothing had happened. "Is it over?" a student asked, huffing and panting. He felt as if he would collapse from exhaustion at any moment. "What should we do now, and what about the others?" another asked. Dell looked around, and he could see there wasn't much blood. Also, during his studies, he discovered that plant-type beasts weren't mostly carnivores. The fact that these plants probably didn't have the acid necessary to digest meat meant that the students were still probably alive. "I hate to say this, but they're probably already dead," Dell lied. "It's best if we head back down to where we were. If we carry on going upward, then there might be even more dangerous beasts." Before heading back down the slope, a student spotted another person walking up. As they saw who it was, a huge smile appeared on their faces. "Sergeant Leo!" the student shouted. There wasn't much that needed to be said, as Leo agreed that he would take them back to the shelter for now. Just as the students were about to head down the slope, Leo started to walk over to a strange object. A certain item was giving off energy, similar to that of a beast weapon. "Do you mind telling me what it looks like?" Leo asked Dell, who wouldn't leave his side. "It appears to be some type of metal flask, although it has some strange design on it. It looks like a beast's head with fangs. Maybe it's one of the items that the students dropped during the struggle," Dell answered. The last thing Quinn could remember was Layla shouting his name. When he finally reached the bottom, Quinn felt his body continuously sinking. "If the plant swallowed me and now I'm falling, doesn't that mean I'm falling into another part of the mountain or underneath the planet?" Quinn thought. He was strong and he had a sturdy body as a vampire, but what was he falling into? "What the hell is this?" a boy yelled as his voice echoed out. "It can't be. Is that Fex's voice?" Quinn thought. Bang! The force and Fex's weight struck Quinn's head and managed to push him through the last bit of strange substance. All he could do was brace himself for impact as he curled up into a ball. Covered in rubble from the walls of the cave, Quinn stood up and discovered that not a lot of damage was done to him. Just then, he could see Fex falling through the sky nearly at the same spot. "Quinn, catch me!" Fex shouted. Still remembering how Fex had shoved him down under here, Quinn chose not to help. If the fall didn't kill him, it wouldn't kill Fex. Stepping to the side at the last moment, Quinn allowed Fex to land headfirst into the same spot as him. They seemed to be in a large, empty cavern. Several large holes or tunnels seemed to lead to different paths. Looking above them, they saw the plant hanging from the ceiling that had swallowed them whole. Layla and Borden were both being slowly sucked down, while their faces were pressed up against each other. This is all your fault for grabbing me," Layla shouted. As the two fell from the plant into the large cave, Layla used her ability to slow her down from falling at a fast speed. Vorden also used the same ability and achieved the same result, so they managed to get down onto the floor safely. In another section of the cavern, the last pairing was of Sia and Peter. Sia noticed that Peter's expression didn't have any trace of fear. She felt like she had no choice but to grab him. Sia was hurt, but Peter managed to break most of her fall. But as she opened her eyes and looked at her comrade next to her, she could see that all of his limbs were mangled and broken. "What's that noise?" Syl said as he stood up from his usual crouched position. The screams from Layla seemed to be so loud that they even reached Syl, who would usually ignore most things. Syl placed his hand on Vorden's shoulder, who was in the chair. "Swap with me," Syl said, his grip tightening on Vorden's shoulder. Knowing that he had no choice, Vorden reluctantly left the seat. "Why are you attacking me?" Syl asked. In another part of the cavern, 2 more students seemed to be stuck together, dealing with their problems. Sia was taken aback at the sight of Peter's legs all mangled. They were utterly broken, and it looked like part of the bone had splintered through parts of the skin. She turned her head away, unable to look at the sight any longer. "Stay here, I will go look for help," Sia said in a panic. "You know, if you didn't hold on to me, the fall wouldn't have been as bad," Peter replied in a calm voice. "I think we should go this way," a voice said, stood right behind her. "Pio, but how? Your legs were all mangled just a few seconds ago." Sia still didn't know Peter's ability, but she had a guess. His watch indicated he was a level 4, and if he managed to recover from an injury like that, most likely his ability was a healing one or a regenerative one. The only thing she couldn't quite put her finger on was the healing speed. Not knowing where to run to, she decided to head into one of the many tunnels. If another student had arrived and had no relation to the person named Pio, then maybe she would have bolted towards Logan, but seeing that the 2 of them had some type of a relationship, she didn't want to risk it. The cave was dark, and it was hard for her to see, but each of the tunnels gave off a little reflection of light. There was always the chance that the small amount of light could be radiating from a beast, or it could be a raw crystal. Because of this, as Sia ran, she also had to be careful about her footing. "This is a pain. I wish I bought some type of light with me or something," Sia complained. Taking another step forward, her foot seemed to be lodged between something. She quickly managed to pull it, but it had greatly slowed her down. She scuttled along until she was behind Logan. Logan then tapped something on the side of his suit, which brightened up the area around him with green lights. The pieces on Logan's equipment were illuminating a small 5-meter radius around them. "I adjusted the scanner the school gave us to increase its radius. I had to power it with my beast crystals. I don't get any points for doing that, but to me it was well worth it," said Logan. "That's when I discovered that there seemed to be a strange tunnel underground, but they didn't quite look natural, so I decided to investigate. I never thought anyone else would be down here, so it was a nice surprise to see you." "Do you know the way out?" Sia asked. Realizing from what Logan said, he should have a wide area mapped out using his scanner. "No," Logan replied. Although this was a lie. He knew they would ask to lead him out of here, but Logan had discovered something on his scanner that he had to check out before leaving. Somewhere inside the large cave, Fex and Quinn had decided to walk down one of the tunnels. While inside the tunnel, the connection between Peter seemed to be lost. It had happened ever since he went underground. Quinn thought that it might have something to do with the distance between the 2 at the moment, as he didn't know that Peter and the others were underground as well. Thinking that help would never arrive, they decided to just leave it up to fate and pick the tunnel with the biggest entrance. As they walked down the tunnel, they noticed that the walls were surrounded by thin blue crystals that gave off a slight glow to them. Not enough to light up the whole area, but one could follow the small light source quite easily. "What are these?" Quinn asked, looking at the small crystals. "Basic tier crystal. Would you like to store it in your system?" The shock from the message was quite immense. At school, they had been taught that the beast crystals could only be obtained from beasts. This was why the human race had been sending hunting parties to slay the beasts, even though there was a chance of death. Some crystals could be used to create powerful weapons, even more powerful than their modern equipment. But right here, crystals were hanging freely on the wall around him, and it wasn't just one crystal. There seemed to be hundreds of crystals through the tunnel they had just walked. Exiting the tunnel, it seemed like they'd arrived at what looked like a type of town. Buildings stretched out far and wide, and it was comparably as large as any one of the shelters they've seen before. Their gaze moved on towards the tallest building that stood in the center of the place. Although a town underneath a mountain was surprising to them, it didn't seem impossible. There were rumors of such shelters being built on other planets, where the temperatures could reach extreme levels at different times of the year. Underground shelters were the only answer to such uninhabitable places. Although the place looked abandoned and was void of people, the buildings were a different matter. The structures looked perfectly fine and hadn't deteriorated a single bit. The only semblance of the passage of time of abandonment was a layer of dust or rock-like substance from the ceiling that coated the top of everything. And finally, the design. Although the substance was strong, it wasn't as flexible and nimble as Galthrium. This meant that the edges weren't smoothed out, giving a slight rocky look. "They're Dalki structures," Quinn muttered. What are you on about?" Flex replied. "These aren't Dalki structures. They're vampire structures." "The boy is right," the system replied. "These resemble the structures that were built in my time." Quinn said, "Why don't we check out some of the buildings? Maybe there will be something inside which will tell us if it was the Dalkis who made this or the vampires." For the first time, as they got closer to the tower, it looked like some of the buildings had been destroyed, as if they had taken part in a battle. The top had crumbled to the ground, and some structures no longer existed. Just then, they heard a sound of growling from the sides. "I guess it's time to call on some extra help." Fex touched his ear and pulled on his dangling earring. Suddenly, in the palm of his hand, the earring started to glow until eventually it started to change its shape, forming what looked like a cross between a bull and a bat. "Ham here at your service," the bull said excitedly as it flew in a circle.
Hi, Quinn here. Wondering what happens next? If you want to jump the queue and unleash all episodes, click on the link here and install the Pocket FM app.